Don't look now, Netflix, but somebody beat you to the punch when it comes to the American version of Squid Game. Should Netflix be nervous? Can they no longer move ahead with an American Squid Game? Well, while I was watching the first half of the movie, I was thinking, you're done. This is great. Well, not great, but pretty good. But then the second half of the movie, and I was like, don't worry about it, Netflix. You'll be just fine. Yes, well, so you see the difference is that in Squid Game, there are intriguing challenges for players to overcome throughout the competition. But with the Running Man, once it starts, once they're off, well, it's basically a giant game of hide and seek. They don't even really run. They hide. And it's really hard to make watching someone hide cinematic or even that entertaining. You're like, so we're just going to do this? And they're like, yep. Want to talk about some messaging? Oh, news! This movie is so message heavy. It's actually more of a message than a movie. And if something's too message heavy pour moi, well, then it's probably it's probably gone too far. And also the movie's depressing. I walked out of this movie so depressed AF, right? And I needed to cheer myself up. I was in bad mood. So what did I decide to do? I went home and I watched 1.5 episodes. I had to go to sleep, of the new and super soap opera thriller series, All Her Fault, on Peacock. And it did the trick. That show is ridiculously melodramatic. Sometimes while I watch it, I go, should I be embarrassed to be watching this? And then I'm like, I don't care. It's the best comfort food since Real Housewives. And it's basically about a lot of housewives, actually. It's really good. All right, so you could stay home and just watch that this weekend or go see Predator. Okay. I think how you feel about this movie will depend. We're going to talk about Predator actually a little bit, but I think, because I want to compare the two. But anyway, I think how you feel about this movie will be dictated a lot on how you feel about Luigi, because this movie's basically about Luigi. I called up my friend, my really good movie friend after seeing this, and I described what the movie was about, and they were like, sounds like Luigi. And I was like, you're right. And I gotta say, Luigi in the abstract is a lot different than Luigi up close and personal. And I thought this, as I said, this movie not only left me depressed, but I thought the ending was, I'm surprised any corporate executive signed off on it, to be honest with you. I can see how some director was like, yeah, but I'd be like, no. Here's the thing. Joker didn't bother me, the first Joker movie, but that really upset some people. I don't know why I was okay with Joker, but not with this. Maybe because the Joker movie was really good. I'll be interested to see how people react to this and maybe what you think the difference between the two is. All right, so let's start with the first half of the movie, which, as I said, is the good half. So, this is actually the second time that Stephen King's novel has been adapted for the big screen. And the first one was 1987 with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Whew! A lot of Stephen King these days. Lots of Arnold adjacent projects. Predator just came out last weekend. And then, of course, there's not only It on HBO, the It prequel, Welcome to Derry right now, but The Long Walk just recently hit theaters. And I would say this is closer to The Long Walk. I liked it better than that movie. This one's at least watchable. But it's nowhere near the quality, in my opinion, of Welcome to Derry. But yeah, the Arnold Schwarzenegger version. If you come into this thinking of that movie as your reference point for this story, you'll probably be disappointed. Although there's one fun little reference to that movie, which got a big laugh from my audience. I was hoping there was going to maybe be more because of this early reference, but that was all they did because it was really clever. But if you come into this movie being like, I wish it was more like the book, well, wish granted, because it's very much like the book, the original Stephen King novel, which again is just so message heavy. Oh my God. But not as much in the first half. So that's why I preferred the first half. The first half is about world building and setting up this world. And I like me some world building, as you know. So they're setting up this dystopian future where the upper and middle class literally live behind a fancy wall. You know, like first and business class on airplanes? Well, what if that was applied to cities? You know, one of the things that's depressing about this movie is that usually when you watch a film or a show about a dystopian future, it feels like a pretty far off thing, and that maybe won't happen if, you know, we make better choices. But this movie seemed maybe 5 to 10 years off only. You were like, I think this might be like tomorrow. It was, you know, it was rough. So not only are they setting up the world that these characters live in, but they're setting up who's in charge. And that's the network, right? That not only features these shows, with Running Man being their most popular with the biggest prize, but also a network that's part of a conglomerate. You know, you see these huge companies, like look at what's happening with Paramount, which has huge government ties. And so as a result, the network in question here has tremendous control, even beyond television, which is why they're able to do what they can. But there's also, for instance, a fun spoof of the Kardashians, which seems to be this network's other most popular show. Now, they also set up not only this network and the shows that they have, but how people audition to be on these shows, what that process is like, you know, and how the Running Man show itself begins. And I thought that was all very interesting. I was like, I like this. This is cool. You know, I like commentary on business. I like theme parks. I like seeing how things could work, right? I'm like, okay, I see how you're organizing that. And I thought that was engaging. And now you'll know when the good half of the movie is over, because it is punctuated with the movie's best action sequence, where Glen Powell wears nothing but a towel. A barely there, very loosely tied on towel. I thought this towel was going to fall off well, you don't think it's going to fall off because you're like, well, I think this is PG-13. So you're like, it's probably going to manage to stay on, but I don't know how it is. But don't worry, it eventually fell off. And Glen Powell, by the way, he's always been in good shape, but here he is at his most jacked. I mean, I kind of blushed when he came out with the towel on. I was like, whoa, are we doing this? Like you might be like, I get it. Glen Powell's walking around in a towel. Oh, you don't get it. This is a level of beefcake that would make even Marvel blush. I was shocked, but also entertained. I would say that the setting up of how the world works in the game show and this towel sequence are the main reasons to see this film. Once the towel sequence is done, you could leave, to be honest with you. So but it's a pretty long sequence, which is good, right? Like, so Powell's contestant is cornered in an apartment building by the show's hunters. And there's a lot of clever elements here. And Edgar Wright is able to extend this sequence believably so that it goes along for a decent amount of time. Far longer than you would think you could extend such a setup. You'd be like, well, is he in the room or not? You know, ever since Edgar Wright almost directed Ant-Man, a long time ago at this point, and they had that clever snippet of footage that he'd shown at Comic-Con or wherever, and people were like, that could have been great if only we'd gotten that movie. So a lot of us have been waiting for Edgar Wright to finally prove himself with an all-out action film. He came close with Baby Driver and Last Night in Soho, but this is where he can really finally, so many years later, show us what he can do with an all-out, big-budget studio blockbuster action film. And I have to say, besides this sequence with the towel, I think he kind of falls flat. You know, it's interesting. Predator Badlands, as I said, came out just last week. And in fact, sadly, it's losing its premium screens to this movie. But Dan Trachtenberg intentionally modeled his movie after the crowd pleasers of the 90s. And what do you know? His movie's turning out to be a crowd pleaser. A lot like Top Gun Maverick, where people come out of the theater going, I didn't think they could make them like that anymore. Now, on the flip side, Edgar Wright's The Running Man is a perfect example, a textbook example of everything that's wrong with modern Hollywood filmmaking. You know, Bob Iger himself said when he came back to Disney after handing the reins ever so briefly but horribly to Chapek, which was his idea to be fair, but he said we made a real mistake in that we made the message the A storyline and then the action, etc., the B storyline, where it's supposed to be reversed. Well, I would say The Running Man has that same problem. Its message is really its A storyline. It's drowning in message. So without spoilers, what is the message of this film? Well, in fact, it's twofold. The first half of the movie is a pretty vicious takedown of Mr. Beast. He's having a rough week, as SNL just called him out too. But while I was watching this movie, thinking of Mr. Beast, it called to mind that hilarious meme from Euphoria. I think the main reason that major networks still aren't doing shows like Mr. Beast is fear of being sued. Mr. Beast even got sued briefly. But if you were to remove the threat of a lawsuit, this movie depicts a world where major corporations with big bucks really do get into this business and level up the production values, the prizes, but also I think the danger. It was crazy how much it was like that. And it's a little shocking to see how cavalier everyone in this movie is about Running Man contestants getting shot point blank or worse for fleeting entertainment. Thankfully, I think from a lot of recent things that have happened, it seems at least for now in the real world, we all still have a bit more humanity than that. I do wonder how audiences will feel watching this movie. But again, after that towel-wearing action sequence, the film slows down considerably as Powell's character really goes to ground. And therefore, action is pretty much entirely removed from the film with only message left. They're like, what can we do while we stand around here and wait? Talk about what's bothering us? And you're like, no, please, anything but that. What's worse, the movie does have some action left in it, but it's extremely poorly staged in the second half. There's Michael Cera's house and a fancy plane for rich people. And they're both clearly large sets. I didn't buy either one as actual places. And so when you combine very fake looking visuals to the preachy script, you're just like, oh my God, right? Like as real and as interesting as the first half of the movie is, the second half is the complete opposite. So how's the cast? Glen Powell's been getting a lot of attention the last few years for everybody saying, hey, look, is that maybe a movie star? And here he is at his most movie star. I haven't totally seen it, but with this movie, I was like, maybe he is. For instance, he struck up a friendship with Tom Cruise. I don't know what's going on between those two. It's weird. But anyway, some are like, is he going to be the new Tom Cruise? And I was like, oh, stop it. No one can be the new Tom Cruise. But watching this movie, I was like, maybe he is. It's weird for Tom Cruise to be like, yes, all about Eve me, Glen Powell. And you're like, All right. So anyway, you know what this movie reminded me a little bit of? Minority Report. Although Minority Report is a much better film. It wasn't very well received when it came out. even a mediocre Steven Spielberg movie is pretty good. And I actually rented it, I think maybe during the pandemic to see it again, because I was like, Spielberg, Tom Cruise, I'll give it a whirl again, because I barely remembered it because I saw it when I was little. And it was not bad, actually. You'd be better off renting that movie this weekend than watching this one. And that also was pretty message heavy, but not like this. Powell really does a lot to elevate this movie, but I still think he made a huge mistake turning down the Jurassic franchise. What a dumb thing to do. So stupid. Especially when you see here what he can do with a front and center action role. He has much more action here than he did in Twisters, which did not do well. This movie is I think Twisters is a good comparison. As weak as Twisters was, I'd say the same for The Running Man. But this is really, again, very message heavy and political. And, movie star 101, don't divide your audience. Josh Brolin with some pretty imposing veneers. I was like, are those his actual veneers or did they clip those on for this movie? But he does a nice job as well. He's having a great winter, 2025, with this and Knives Out 3. Same for Colman Domingo. He's extremely busy these days, even busier than Josh Brolin. And both Brolin and Domingo have big movie energy here. They're great. Also, as soon as you see Jamie Lawson, at least for me, again, just like when we saw her in Sinners, we were like, Storm? I think maybe that's Storm. However, her only issue is she's just 5'6". She looks really short next to Glen Powell, which, she looks like Storm, but sadly, she might be too short to play Storm. But she really looks like Storm. She'd be, I'm not sure. How do you feel? Do you think the height's a deal breaker? But I gotta say, this is the Glen Powell show. Everyone else's role, besides Brolin, and even that is like a supporting, but everybody else's role is very small. If you're seeing this movie for anyone but Glen Powell, you're going to be disappointed. Michael Cera, Lee Pace. I even forgot Lee Pace was in this movie until he showed up in the third act. William H. Macy, Katie O'Brien, Daniel Ezra. They're all very good, but barely in the film. I was so happy when Katie O'Brien had gotten this gig, and it's like she's hardly in the movie at all, which was really disappointing. Martin Harley from SNL's Please Don't Destroy. I'm glad, his career's not over. Good for him. I believe he just left or was just, I think he was demoted just to writing staff, but he occasionally shows up still on SNL. But he was pretty good here. He really stood out. He did a nice job. He made the most of the opportunity, I would say. And Sean Hayes. I love Sean Hayes. And it was criminal how underused he is here. They must have cut a lot of what he filmed, because who would hire him for like a blink and you miss it cameo? I bet a lot of people don't even realize he's in this movie, which is a shame, because Sean Hayes, again, is fantastic. To be brutally honest, I've been pretty brutally honest this entire review, but I'm really going to do it now. I don't think The Running Man is good enough to see in theaters. I mean, if you really want to go to the movie theater, or you have a subscription so it doesn't cost you anything. But even then, I don't really know if it's a good use of your time. But I mean, it has its moments, but like that makes it better for a streaming movie, where for the first half, when you watch it at home, you'll be like, I should have seen it in theaters. That Grace. But then when you get to the second half, you'll be like, oh, she was right. You'll go on your phone, you'll fall asleep, you'll walk away and forget that it's on, or you'll just turn it off. Just turn it off. Don't let it go out at least with some dignity. I have totally lost faith in Edgar Wright after this. He should go back to doing smaller comedy films. I don't think he's an action director, I'm sorry to say. And I also suspect he really needs Simon Pegg, who co-wrote Edgar Wright's most famous movies. I guess he's also particularly well known for Scott Pilgrim, but this has a lot of the same problems as Scott Pilgrim. You're like, oh, really good idea. Never really gets there. Although I'm sure some Scott Pilgrim fans are like, how dare you? Then maybe you'll like this. I still believe in Glen Powell, but he's still searching for the right movie. He shouldn't have turned down Jurassic. I mean, Jurassic is the right movie, even if look how well those other Jurassic guys are doing. That could have been you, Glenn. That could have been you. All right, so that's my review of The Running Man, hitting theaters this weekend and then down the line on digital and streaming. All right, share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.